Daniel Heller looked at the badge in Vanessa Ward's hand. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. The lobby had gone still in that expensive way where everyone pretended to keep moving, but nobody really did. A man near the elevators lowered his phone. The receptionist stopped typing. Behind the glass doors, the morning traffic on Wacker Drive kept sliding by like nothing inside mattered. Vanessa's smile stayed on her face. That was the worst part. Daniel looked at me first, then at my empty blazer lapel, then back at her. Where did you get the impression he said that Ms. Morales was someone you could remove from this building? No one breathed loudly. Vanessa blinked once, her fingers tightened around my badge. I was just handling a situation, she said. Daniel waited. She looked around, but the lobby gave her nothing. Not one person stepped forward, not even the security guard she had mentioned 5 minutes earlier. I remember the sound of my own sleeve brushing against my side. Cheap fabric, clean but not expensive. I had ironed that blazer twice before leaving my apartment that morning. I had thought that would be enough. That morning I got to the building before 8. The lobby smelled like coffee and floor polish. Everything was glass stone and quiet money, the kind of quiet that made you lower your voice without knowing why. I stood near the reception desk with my purse tucked under my arm, watching people scan in. Navy coats, leather bags, shoes that did not squeak. Mine squeaked once. Just once. I shifted my weight and hoped nobody heard it. The receptionist asked for my name. She was polite but tired. Lena Morales, I said. First day, operations analyst. She checked the screen. Give me 1 second. I nodded and looked at the wall behind her. There was a framed photo of the executive team from some charity dinner. Men in dark suits, women in dresses that looked simple until you understood what simple cost. My mother had texted me before sunrise. Proud of you, Mija. Don't forget to eat. I had stared at that message on the train longer than I should have. A woman came through the turnstiles laughing softly into her phone. Tall, beige coat, blonde hair pulled back so tightly it made her face look untouched by weather. She had that easy office walk like every door opened before she reached it. The receptionist straightened a little. Good morning, Ms. Ward. The woman glanced at her, then at me. Not long, just enough. Her eyes moved from my shoes to my blazer to my face, then back to the blazer. I knew that look. I had seen it in boutiques, school offices, apartment leasing desks. It was always dressed as curiosity. She ended her call. Are we expecting catering? The receptionist looked confused. No, this is Ms. Morales. She's starting today. Vanessa turned fully toward me. Oh, one small word, soft enough that someone could pretend it meant nothing. I held out my hand because that seemed like the correct thing. Lena Morales. She looked at my hand. Then she smiled. Vanessa Ward. She did shake my hand, barely. Her fingers were cool and dry. What department? Operations. Analyst? Yes. She tilted her head a little. Really? The receptionist slid my temporary badge across the desk. I reached for it, but Vanessa picked it up first. Like it was hers to inspect. First day, she asked. Yes. And that's what you wore. It took a second for the words to settle. They were not loud. That made them worse. A man passing behind her slowed down, then he kept walking. I looked at Vanessa's face. She was still smiling. I'm sorry. She gave a small laugh through her nose. No, I mean, it's fine. It's just, this building has a certain standard. The receptionist looked down at her keyboard. I should have said something. I had practiced being direct. I had read articles about workplace confidence and how women apologize too much. But my mouth closed. Vanessa tapped the badge against her palm. Women like you usually come through another entrance. I felt my hands go still. Not shaking, just still. That isn't appropriate, I said. My voice sounded too calm, almost borrowed. Her smile thinned. Careful. One word, like she was doing me a favor. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tiny gold initials on her necklace. You don't belong in this building, she said. The receptionist's chair creaked. No one looked at me. Vanessa held up the badge just out of reach. I'm going to have security walk you out in 5 minutes, she said. We can let HR sort out whatever mistake this was. I remember looking at the badge. My name was printed slightly crooked. Lena Morales. For some reason that hurt more than what she said. I had spent the night before arranging my clothes on the back of a chair. I had chosen the cream blouse because it looked professional on camera interviews. I had sewn the loose button on my blazer sleeve while my mother watched television in the next room and pretended not to worry about rent. This job was not a dream. It was health insurance. It was breathing room. It was the first time in years I had not calculated grocery prices in my head before touching anything. Vanessa turned toward the security desk. "Mark." The guard looked up slowly. Before he answered, the revolving door moved. 3 men entered. One of them I recognized only from video calls, always framed by bookshelves and bad lighting. Daniel Heller looked older in person. Smaller too somehow. Gray hair, no tie, a coat that probably cost more than my first car but did not announce itself. He saw Vanessa first. Then he saw me. His face changed. Not shocked, not warm. Alert. The kind of look people give when a detail confirms something they already suspected. "Lena," he said. My first name in that lobby sounded like a file opening. Vanessa turned back, still holding my badge. "You know her." Daniel did not answer right away. He walked toward us and stopped beside the reception desk, close enough that Vanessa had to lower her hand. His eyes moved to the badge. "Why do you have that?" Vanessa laughed once, too quick. There was a misunderstanding. Daniel looked at me. I didn't explain. I didn't trust my voice anymore. He looked back at Vanessa. "Give it to her." Her hand moved, but slowly. She placed the badge on the counter instead of handing it to me. I picked it up. The plastic was warm from her fingers. Daniel watched me clip it onto my blazer. His face stayed unreadable. Then he turned to Vanessa. "Does your father know you're making staffing decisions in the lobby now?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Behind her, the receptionist finally looked at me. Not with kindness, exactly. More like she had just realized I had been standing there the whole time. Daniel lowered his voice. "Conference room 12, 5 minutes?" Vanessa nodded, but not at me. "Never at me." I followed him toward the elevators. My shoes squeaked again on the polished floor. This time I did not stop walking. The elevator doors closed and nobody spoke for a few seconds. Daniel stood beside me with one hand in his coat pocket. 2 men from legal were behind us, pretending not to look at either of us. I kept staring at the floor numbers lighting up. 23. 24. 25. My badge sat crooked against my blazer. I fixed it twice. Daniel noticed. I could tell he noticed everything. "You came in person," I said finally. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. "We had a board meeting scheduled." He glanced at me. "And I wanted to see how they handled your arrival." I looked at him then. Not fully, just enough. The elevator dinged. Nobody moved immediately. The legal team waited for Daniel first. That told me more about the company than orientation ever would. Conference room 12 sat at the end of a long hallway lined with glass offices. Quiet carpet, abstract paintings nobody actually looked at. People looked at me, though. Not openly. But I felt it. The woman from HR hurried toward us, carrying a tablet against her chest. "Ms. Morales," she said quickly. There was obviously some confusion this morning. Daniel kept walking. HR followed faster. "We're very excited to have you here." I nodded once. She smiled too much, the kind people use when something expensive has almost broken. Inside the conference room, Daniel sat near the window while the legal team spread papers across the table. Nobody offered me coffee. That part stayed with me. One of the lawyers finally looked over. "You've been working remotely on the contractor review." "Yes." "How much access were you given previously?" "Enough." He blinked once. Daniel almost smiled at that. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We'll need discretion moving forward." I folded my hands together under the table so nobody would see my fingers pressing into each other. "I signed the NDA 6 months ago." "Yes, of course." He shuffled papers after that, fast. Like I had embarrassed him somehow. Daniel leaned back slightly. "Has anyone explained to you why you were brought on site now?" "Number." "Good." The room went quiet again. He looked toward the windows overlooking the river. "There are discrepancies in labor allocation and redevelopment reporting. We believe several departments were intentionally separated from the full picture." I listened. Carefully. Not because I was afraid of missing something, Because I was afraid I already understood too much. We need someone, Daniel said, who hasn't fully adapted to this environment yet. One of the lawyers shifted in his chair at that sentence. Daniel noticed him too. You disagree? Number. But he answered too quickly. Daniel looked back at me. You still want the position? The question landed strangely. Not because of the work. Because nobody had asked me that all morning. I thought about Vanessa holding my badge like it belonged to her. I thought about the receptionist staring at her keyboard. About my mother ironing uniforms for hotel staff when I was growing up because rich people tipped better when collars looked crisp. I do, I said. Daniel nodded once. Good. Then he opened a folder and slid it toward me. Restricted internal access. My stomach tightened a little when I saw the label. Review these before tomorrow, he said. The HR woman finally spoke again. We should probably continue onboarding first. No, Daniel said. Just that. No anger, no volume. She stopped talking immediately. After the meeting, HR walked me through the office. People had changed by then. Not completely, but enough. The same man who had ignored me in the lobby suddenly held open a door. A woman near compliance introduced herself twice because she forgot she already had. Someone offered me sparkling water. I almost laughed at that one. The office itself looked exactly how magazines imagined success should look. Glass walls, soft lighting, quiet conversations near espresso machines. Nobody cleaned themselves. There were no family photos on desks, only framed degrees and conference passes. I noticed where people sat during meetings too. Who interrupted? Who got interrupted? Vanessa's office sat near the executive corridor, frosted glass, corner placement. Inheritance with square footage. I tried not to look when we passed, but I caught movement inside. She was standing near her desk talking sharply into her phone, her posture stiff, one arm folded tightly across herself. The second she saw me through the glass, she stopped speaking. Neither of us waved. HR kept talking beside me. And business casual is generally acceptable outside client-facing situations. I almost looked down at my blazer again. Almost. At lunch, I stood near the cafe refrigerators, pretending to decide between salads I could not comfortably afford every day. A group at the long table nearby kept talking over each other about ski trips and restaurants in Aspen. Nobody looked at me. Then one of them did. A man from acquisitions, mid-30s maybe. Lena, right. I nodded carefully. There's space here if you want. 3 chairs shifted immediately. Just like that. This morning there had been no space at all. I sat at the edge of the table. People smiled too politely now. Asked where I went to school, what neighborhood I lived in, how long I'd worked with Daniel. That last question came twice. I answered carefully both times. One woman stirred her soup while watching me over the spoon. So what exactly are you working on? Before I could answer, another voice cut in. Whatever it is, apparently it scares executives. A few people laughed softly. Not fully relaxed. I picked at my salad. Nobody mentioned the lobby. Not directly. But the silence around it sat there anyway. Like a stain everyone agreed not to point at. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the copy room and heard 2 assistants talking before they realized I was there. That's her. I think so. She doesn't look. One of them saw me then. Both went quiet immediately. I grabbed the printouts I didn't even need and left. Near 6 o'clock, most of the office started emptying. Expensive coats, quick goodnights, elevator traffic. I stayed at my desk reviewing the restricted files Daniel had given me. Pages of contractor structures. Redevelopment payouts. Internal transfers. The deeper I went, the stranger the numbers became. Certain approvals repeated across departments that supposedly never interacted. Some signatures were blacked out. Others weren't. Then I saw a familiar last name. Ward. Not Vanessa. Her father. Senior Vice President of Operations. I stared at the page for a long time. A soft knock hit my desk divider. I looked up. Vanessa stood there holding her phone against her chest. No smile this time. Up close she looked tired, not messy. People like her never looked messy. Just stretched thin. I need to ask you something, she said quietly. I waited. Her eyes flicked toward the file in front of me. Then back to me. Did Daniel hire you to investigate my father? I closed the folder before answering. Not dramatically, just enough to cover the names. Vanessa stayed where she was, one hand around her phone, nails pressed lightly into the case. The office behind her had mostly emptied out. Cleaning staff moved quietly near the elevators with gray carts and tied-back trash bags. I looked at her. I'm an analyst. That's not what I asked. Her voice was lower now than it had been in the lobby, less polished, more careful. I leaned back slightly in my chair. I don't know what Daniel hired me to do exactly. That's convenient. I didn't answer. She glanced toward the glass offices lining the executive hallway. My father's been in meetings all afternoon, she paused. Nobody tells me anything when that starts happening. You work here. She gave a short laugh at that. You noticed how this place works yet? I looked down at the folder again. A little. Vanessa nodded once like that confirmed something. Then she looked at my desk. The stack of printed reports. My old notebook from Target. The lunch receipt I forgot to throw away. Her eyes rested on the notebook longer than I expected. My first week here, she said someone told me I looked too young to be in strategy meetings. I said nothing. She asked whose daughter I was before she asked my name. I watched her face carefully. No smile now, no performance either. Just tiredness trying not to show itself. What did you say? I asked. That my father was Michael Ward. And she apologized immediately. Vanessa looked away after that, toward the dark windows. That was worse somehow. I didn't know what response she wanted. Maybe she didn't either. A cleaning woman entered quietly beside us to empty a trash bin. Vanessa stepped aside automatically without looking at her. The woman nodded politely anyway. I watched the whole thing happen. The habits people never notice in themselves. Vanessa caught me noticing. What? Nothing. No, go ahead. I shook my head. She stared at me for another second, then exhaled through her nose. You think I'm a bad person? I looked at her. The fluorescent lights overhead made everything flatter after dark, less impressive. Offices always looked more honest at night. I think you're used to people disappearing when you decide they should. That landed. Not visibly at first. But her fingers tightened around the phone again. I said I was wrong earlier. No, I said quietly. You said it was a misunderstanding. Her jaw moved slightly. There it was. The thing underneath. Not guilt, exactly. More like irritation that I remembered the exact wording. Vanessa pulled out the chair across from my desk and sat down without asking. Her heels clicked softly against the floor when she crossed one leg over the other. My father built half this division, she said. People have been trying to push him out for years. Why? He's difficult. I waited. And because he knows where everything is buried. That sentence stayed between us a second too long. She realized it immediately. You know what I mean? I think I do. Another silence. Then she nodded toward the folder. What did they give you access to? I can't discuss internal files. Jesus. She leaned back. You really talk like compliance already. I worked contracts for 6 years. That's not what I meant. I looked at her properly then. She was beautiful in the way expensive environments polish people early. Perfect skin, controlled posture, hair that never moved wrong. But up close there were signs. A faint crease between her eyebrows. Half-moon marks where she'd pressed her nails into her palm. The exhaustion people carry when they've spent too long performing certainty. You know, everyone thinks Daniel brought you in because of today, she said. What do you think? She hesitated. That surprised me. I think she said slowly you were already important before you walked through the door. The cleaning staff moved farther down the hall. Vacuum noise hummed softly against the carpet. I looked at the clock on my screen. 7:12 p.m. My mother would still be awake waiting for me to text. She always waited even when she pretended she didn't. Vanessa followed my eyes to the clock. You have family here. My mother. That's it. I nodded. My dad remarried 3 times, she said. I have half-siblings I only see on Christmas. The way she said it made Christmas sound like a dentist appointment. She stood up suddenly after that, like sitting too long had made her say more than intended. I shouldn't have said what I did this morning. The words came out stiff, Practiced halfway there, abandoned halfway through. I looked at her but didn't rescue her from the silence. She glanced down at my blazer sleeve then. The loose stitching near the cuff had started fraying again. Her expression changed for a second. Very small. Recognition, maybe. Or embarrassment. When I started here, she said quietly, I bought an entire new wardrobe before my first day. I said nothing. My father told me nobody respects insecurity. She gave a short smile after saying it. Not happy. Just familiar. Then she picked up her phone again. I need to know if he's in trouble. There it was finally. Not arrogance. Fear. I closed the folder fully this time. I don't know yet. She studied my face like she was trying to decide whether I was lying. Then her eyes dropped briefly to my desk. To be honest, she said softly, I don't think he knows everything either. Before I could answer, footsteps approached from the hallway. Daniel. No rush in his walk, no wasted movement. Vanessa stood immediately when she saw him. Interesting. Daniel looked between us. Still here. I was leaving, Vanessa said. But she stayed exactly where she was. Daniel glanced at the closed folder on my desk. Then at Vanessa. You should go home. Something in his tone made her jaw tighten instantly. Not disrespect, familiarity. Like they'd had this exact conversation before. She grabbed her coat from the chair beside my desk. At the last second, she looked back at me. Not friendly. Not cold either. Just uncertain. You should be careful, she said quietly. With what? She opened her mouth. Stopped. Then looked toward Daniel instead. That's the problem with this company, she said. Nobody tells the truth until it's expensive. And then she walked away. Her heels echoed down the nearly empty hallway until the elevator doors closed behind her. Daniel stayed standing beside my desk. Neither of us spoke immediately. He looked toward the folder. You read the ward files? Some. And I thought about Vanessa sitting across from me, trying not to defend her father too quickly. I thought about the lobby. About how easy it had been for everyone to let me disappear until someone important looked directly at me. I think I said slowly, people here learn very early who gets protected. Daniel nodded once, like I had finally arrived at something. Then he placed another file on my desk. Thicker than the first one. Read page 43 tonight, he said. After he walked away, I opened it. My own signature was waiting there. I stared at the signature for a long time before I recognized my own handwriting. Not because it looked unfamiliar. Because I didn't remember signing anything connected to redevelopment restructuring. The date sat at the top right corner. 8 months earlier. Back when I was still doing contract processing from my apartment kitchen table with a space heater under my desk because the radiator barely worked. I flipped through the pages slowly. Vendor approvals. Labor reallocations. Temporary staffing transitions. Everything written in language soft enough to hide inside. Operational flexibility. Contract streamlining. Regional labor optimization. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my thumb against the edge of the paper until it bent slightly. Page 43. My name again. Approval confirmed. I remembered that week suddenly. 3 departments had dumped work on contractors before quarterly reporting deadlines. Everyone wanted signatures fast. Nobody answered questions directly. I had signed 32 documents in 2 days. Maybe more. My phone buzzed. My mother. You coming home soon? I typed almost there and deleted it. Then typed yes. At home, I left my shoes beside the door and stood in the kitchen longer than necessary. My mother looked up from the couch when she heard me. You ate. Yeah. You sure? I nodded. She muted the television and studied my face carefully. Not invasive, just practiced. Single mothers learn how to read silence like weather. How was the first day? I loosened my hair tie slowly. It was work. That bad. I gave half a shrug. She waited. I opened the fridge even though I wasn't hungry. Cold air hit my face. There was some weird office politics. Office politics means rich people acting strange. I smiled despite myself. Basically. She watched me pull out water I didn't drink. Then her eyes dropped to the badge clipped to my blazer. You finally got your own office badge. I looked down at it too. The plastic reflected the kitchen light. Lena Morales. Operations analyst. The title still felt borrowed. My mother stood and came over quietly. When she touched the sleeve of my blazer, her fingers paused at the fraying cuff immediately. Of course she noticed first. I can fix this tonight. It's fine. Mia. It's fine. The second time came out sharper. She pulled her hand back. I looked away right after, toward the sink. I'm sorry. No, she shook her head once. You're tired. I nodded, even though tired wasn't the word. She returned to the couch after that, but lowered the TV volume almost completely, giving me room without announcing it. I stayed in the kitchen another 20 minutes pretending to check emails, mostly staring at my own signature in scanned documents on my phone. The next morning the office felt different again. Not friendlier. More alert. People lowered their voices when I passed. Conversations stopped half a second too late. The legal department doors stayed closed longer than before. I caught 2 executives looking at me during a budget meeting. Not socially. Carefully. Like people examining whether something fragile might become dangerous. Around noon, Daniel asked me to join him in one of the smaller conference rooms overlooking the river. No assistants, no legal team. Just him. He slid another stack of documents across the table. I reviewed your contractor history. I sat down slowly. You processed hundreds of approvals last year. Yes. Did you question any of them? I wasn't given authority to. That isn't what I asked. I looked at the papers but didn't touch them. Outside the windows, rain blurred the buildings across the river into gray shapes. I questioned things privately, I said finally. But contractors who ask too many questions stop getting renewed. Daniel nodded slightly. Like he already knew. Do you know why companies separate responsibility across temporary staff? I didn't answer. Because fragmented accountability protects leadership. His voice stayed calm, almost academic. If nobody sees the full structure, nobody feels responsible for the outcome. I stared at the table. One of the papers near my elbow contained my initials beside labor transfer approvals, connected to workers who later lost healthcare classification. I swallowed once. Quietly. You think I helped them? I think the system was designed so you wouldn't fully understand what you were helping. That still helped them. Daniel didn't interrupt. That somehow made it worse. I looked toward the window again. When I was contracting, I said slowly I used to keep my laptop open during dinner, because if somebody emailed after 6 and I didn't respond fast enough, they'd stop assigning hours. Daniel stayed silent. I signed whatever came through because I was scared all the time. There. Not loud, not dramatic. Just true. He folded his hands together. Fear is efficient. I laughed once under my breath. Not because it was funny. That sounds like something rich people say after ruining everyone else's nervous system. A small pause. Then unexpectedly Daniel nodded. You're not wrong. I looked at him properly then. Older men in finance usually carried themselves like certainty was permanent. Daniel didn't. He looked tired in a way expensive suits couldn't hide. When did you know, I asked? That the reporting was compromised. Yes. About a year ago. And you stayed. I stayed long enough to understand how deep it went. I looked down at the papers again. You could have stopped it earlier. Yes. No defense. No explanation. That irritated me more than excuses would have. The room stayed quiet after that. Then Daniel pushed one final document toward me. Formal review authorization. My name typed neatly at the bottom. If this proceeds publicly, he said your findings become attached to the investigation record. I felt my stomach tighten. Not because of the work. Because names stay attached forever. People in firms like this survived by remaining professionally forgettable. I thought about Vanessa in the lobby holding my badge like she had already decided what kind of woman I was. Then I thought about myself 8 months earlier clicking approval on documents I barely understood because rent was due in 4 days. Same building. Different form of fear. Daniel watched me carefully. You can walk away, he said. Can I? He didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. After the meeting, I went to the restroom near compliance and locked myself into the last stall. Not crying. Just sitting there with my elbows on my knees staring at the tile floor. Someone entered 2 stalls down, talking softly on the phone about dinner reservations. Normal voice, normal life. I pressed my fingers against my forehead until the skin hurt. Then I took off my badge. Held it in my hand. I realized something sitting there in that freezing restroom under fluorescent lights. All this time I had been telling myself I survived systems like this because I stayed careful. Quiet. Useful. But useful people still sign things. Useful people keep things moving. Useful people help powerful people sleep at night. When I got home that evening, I placed the badge face down on the kitchen counter beside unopened mail. My mother noticed immediately. She looked at the badge. Then at me. You quitting? I shook my head. Then what happened? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She waited a few seconds longer before nodding once. Okay, she said softly. And somehow that almost broke me more than if she had pushed. Later that night, an email from Daniel appeared on my phone. 1 sentence only. Are you prepared to attach your name to this? I stared at it until the screen dimmed black in my hand. I didn't answer Daniel's email that night. Or the next morning. I carried the phone around my apartment while the message sat unread officially, even though I had memorized every word. My mother left for work before sunrise. I heard her moving quietly in the kitchen so she wouldn't wake me, even though she knew I was already awake. When I finally came out, she had left coffee in the microwave with a sticky note beside it. Eat something today. No question mark. I stood there holding the note longer than necessary. At work, people stopped talking when elevators opened. Not always because of me, but enough. The office had developed that strained politeness companies use when something legal is happening behind closed doors. Fewer jokes, more scheduled meetings, everyone suddenly documenting conversations by email. I sat at my desk reviewing staffing records while compliance teams moved in and out of conference rooms carrying binders. Around 10, a message popped onto my screen. Vanessa Ward, can we talk privately? I stared at it. Then typed, okay. She asked me to meet in one of the smaller break rooms near executive offices. When I walked in, she was already there pouring coffee she clearly didn't want. She looked tired again. No makeup today except concealer under her eyes. Funny what disappears first when people stop performing. She handed me a paper cup automatically before realizing she had no idea how I took it. Sorry, she said. It's fine. I added my own sugar. 3 packets. She noticed. So she said quietly, it's serious. I stirred the coffee slowly. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. The spoon tapped once against the cup. You've had legal attached to you for 2 days. I looked up. Attached to me. You know what I mean? There it was again. That thing wealthy people do. Speaking like access and proximity are natural states. I leaned against the counter. What exactly are you asking me? She folded her arms tightly. My father came home at midnight yesterday. I waited. He didn't eat dinner, didn't even loosen his tie. Her eyes drifted toward the windows. I've seen him like that maybe twice in my life. Neither of us spoke for a second. Then she said quietly, was it fraud? I watched her carefully. Not defensive now. Not angry. Just trying to prepare herself before someone else controlled the narrative. I'm not discussing active reviews. Vanessa laughed softly under her breath. God, you really learned the language fast. That language existed before me. She looked at me then, fully. You think I don't know that? The break room refrigerator hummed behind us. Someone walked past the hallway outside without looking in. Vanessa rubbed at the side of her cup with her thumb. My father started here before we had money, she said. Do you know that? I shook my head. He grew up in Indiana. His dad sold appliances. That surprised me enough, she noticed. Yeah, she said quietly. Not exactly old money royalty. So what happened? He got promoted. The answer came too fast. Like she'd already rehearsed it privately. He learned how people at this level survive, then he got good at it. I looked down at my coffee. That sounds expensive. She smiled once. Small, tired. It was. The silence after that felt different. Less like enemies, more like 2 people standing too close to something collapsing. Vanessa sat down at the small table near the vending machines. You know the worst part, she asked. I didn't answer. He used to tell me confidence was the only thing people respected. She stared into her untouched coffee. So I spent half my life pretending I had it. I thought about the lobby again, the way she held my badge, the certainty in her voice. Or the performance of certainty. Why humiliate me, I asked finally. She looked up slowly. Because you walked in looking nervous. That answer stayed in the room. Honest enough to be ugly. I thought, she stopped, started again. I thought if I let people see weakness around me, they'd smell it on me too. I looked away first. Not because I forgave her. Because I understood her more than I wanted to. A few hours later, the company announced mandatory department reviews through internal email. People pretended to keep working afterward. Nobody really did. 2 desks near operations stayed empty after lunch. Contractors, access suspended pending review. One manager spent 15 straight minutes reorganizing papers while visibly shaking. Fear moved differently through offices than through families. Quieter. More expensive. Near 4 o'clock, a junior assistant named Priya stopped beside my desk holding a coffee tray. You forgot this from the cafe downstairs. I didn't order anything. Oh. She looked embarrassed immediately. Then glanced around the office. I just thought maybe you hadn't eaten. I stared at her a second too long. She shifted awkwardly. You don't have to take it. No, I reached for the cup, thank you. She nodded quickly and walked off before anyone noticed. The coffee had too much cream in it. I drank it anyway. Across the office, I caught 2 directors watching me. Not friendly. Not hostile either. Careful. Like they still hadn't decided whether I was temporary or dangerous. Near 6, Daniel asked me into another meeting. This time there were board members. Outside counsel too. Nobody smiled when I entered. One older man adjusted his cufflinks and asked, Ms. Morales, are you comfortable formally verifying your findings? Comfortable. Interesting word choice. I sat down slowly. Papers waited in front of me, prepared statements, timelines, audit summaries. My own name appeared repeatedly now. Attached. Visible. I thought about all the years I spent trying not to be visible at all. Before I answer, I said carefully I want clarification on contractor liability protections. A few heads lifted at that. The outside attorney leaned forward slightly. What specifically? Temporary staff processed approvals without full structural disclosure. I want documented acknowledgement of compartmentalized authorization practices. The room went still. Not dramatic. Just attentive. The attorney looked at Daniel once before answering. That can be included. Good, I thought. Because I was done carrying systems on my back that pretended I had chosen them freely. After the meeting ended, most people left quickly. Nobody lingered anymore. Too risky. As I packed my bag, I noticed movement near the elevators. Vanessa. She stood there in her coat, holding her phone loosely at her side. Waiting. When I approached, she looked at me carefully. My father's resigning, she said. I stopped walking. He told me an hour ago. Neither of us moved. The elevator doors opened behind her, closed again. He said it was for health reasons, she added quietly. I looked at her face. For the first time since meeting her, she looked young. Not polished. Just tired and embarrassed and trying not to fall apart in public. He's not a bad man, she said softly. I answered before I could stop myself. I don't think bad people usually look like bad people. Her eyes dropped. Then she nodded once, like someone finally saying the thing she had been avoiding herself. The office got quieter after Michael Ward resigned. Not calmer. Just quieter. People closed doors more often. Meetings moved to video calls even when everyone was in the building. Entire conversations happened through carefully worded emails nobody would regret later. Vanessa stopped coming in for a few days. Nobody mentioned her directly. But I heard pieces. She's staying with her mother. I heard legal interviewed half the operations team. Daniel's pulling out. That last one traveled fastest. Money always does. I spent most mornings in conference rooms with outside compliance attorneys reviewing contractor records. The work itself wasn't dramatic, mostly timelines, approvals, clarifications people suddenly remembered differently than before. What changed was how people looked at me. Not admiration. Distance. Like I had become associated with consequences. One afternoon, I walked into the cafe downstairs, and the woman at the register smiled nervously before giving me my coffee for free by mistake. I handed the money back immediately. She flushed red. Sorry, It's okay. But she kept apologizing anyway. That's the thing nobody tells you about power shifting. Sometimes people become uncomfortable around you before they become respectful. A week later, Daniel asked me to join him for dinner after work. Not socially. He made that clear immediately. There are documents I'd rather discuss off-site. We met at a quiet restaurant near the river where businessmen whispered over bourbon, and everyone pretended not to recognize each other. Daniel was already seated when I arrived. No jacket this time, just a dark sweater and reading glasses low on his nose while he reviewed papers. He looked older outside the office. More human. You found the place okay? He asked. Yeah. I sat across from him carefully. The waiter came over. Daniel ordered iced tea. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu without meaning to. Old habits. Daniel noticed. He noticed everything. You don't need to do that here. I know. But I still didn't change the order. The waiter left. Daniel folded his glasses slowly. The board accepted Michael Ward's resignation this morning. I nodded once. There'll be restructuring across operations and contractor oversight. Okay. And likely several promotions. That word hung there. I looked out the window toward the river walk below, couples in coats moving through cold evening air, normal people having normal Thursdays. You're offering me one, I said. Yes. Not hesitant. Not manipulative. Just direct. I stared at the table. What exactly would that look like? Director-level authority over compliance integration. I almost laughed. 8 months ago, I was invoicing hourly contract work from a folding table in my apartment. Now someone was offering me executive authority over the same system that used to keep me terrified of missing rent. Daniel watched my face quietly. The compensation package would be substantial, he added. There it was. The practical language of American life? Compensation package. Not freedom, not security. Compensation. I rubbed my thumb against the edge of the napkin beside my plate. My mother could retire, I said, without meaning to say it aloud. Daniel nodded. Yes. The food arrived after that, but neither of us touched it immediately. I looked down at my plate. Tiny portions arranged beautifully. Expensive restaurants always made hunger look decorative. Why me? I asked finally. You're competent. That's not enough for jobs like this. No, he agreed. Usually it isn't. I looked at him. You could hire someone safer. Yes. But, Daniel leaned back slightly. People who adapt too comfortably to these environments stop noticing what they're becoming. The sentence sat with me. Not because it sounded wise. Because part of me already knew it was true. The next Saturday, I drove to the neighborhood where I grew up. I hadn't planned to. I just kept driving after grocery shopping and ended up there without deciding. The apartment building looked smaller than I remembered. The laundromat beside it still had the same flickering sign. A boy rode past on a bike too small for him while his mother yelled from a balcony window. I stayed inside the car, hands resting on the steering wheel. When I was little, I used to think successful people probably never felt embarrassed, that once you made enough money, your body relaxed permanently. No more checking bank accounts before buying groceries. No more pretending not to notice overdue notices. No more apologizing for existing in spaces built for richer people. But sitting there in my car, wearing a coat that cost more than anything my mother ever bought herself, I realized embarrassment just changes clothes. At the office Monday morning, Vanessa was back. No announcement, no dramatic entrance. She just appeared at her desk again, wearing navy instead of black this time. People watched her carefully when she walked through the floor. Nobody knew the correct social distance anymore. Around noon, she stopped beside my office. My office. I still wasn't used to that. You have a minute. I nodded. She stepped inside and closed the glass door halfway. Not fully. Interesting. I heard Daniel made you an offer. News moved fast here. I haven't answered. Vanessa folded her arms loosely. For what it's worth? She paused. You should take it. I looked at her. You don't even know what it is. I know this company. She glanced around my office after saying that. The framed skyline print, the untouched bookshelf, the coat hanging neatly beside the door. "You spend enough years here," she said quietly. "You start confusing exhaustion with importance." I didn't answer. She looked down briefly at her hands. "My father's at home every day now," she said. "Do you know how strange that is?" "Number." "He keeps trying to fix things." "Like what?" "The garage door, kitchen drawers, stuff nobody asked him to touch." A small smile appeared for half a second. "He doesn't know what to do with himself without people needing things." That one landed harder than she realized. Because I understood it too. After she left, I sat alone in the office for a long time staring at Daniel's promotion packet sitting unopened beside my keyboard. At 6:30 that evening, I walked into Daniel's office carrying the folder. He looked up immediately. "You decided?" I nodded once and placed the packet on his desk. "Yes." Daniel looked at the folder between us. He didn't open it right away. Outside his office windows, the city had already gone dark. Reflections covered the glass harder than the skyline did. "You're declining," he said. "Not surprised." "Just confirming." I sat across from him and rested my purse on my lap. "Yes." A small nod. "May I ask why?" I looked down at my hands first. The habit was still there, even now. "I spent too many years trying to become acceptable to rooms like this," I said quietly. "I don't think I want my whole life built around keeping them comfortable." Daniel stayed silent. I appreciated that about him by then. He didn't rush to fill space just because it existed. "There's another offer," I continued. "The external oversight group." "The consulting role." "Yes." "Less money?" "Still more than I ever thought I'd make." That almost made him smile. Almost. He leaned back slowly in his chair. "You know, most people would take the title." "I know." "And?" I looked toward the office floor outside his glass walls, empty desks, soft cleaning lights, a few employees still working late because they didn't know how not to anymore. "My mother cleaned offices for 20 years, I said. She used to tell me rich people leave entire versions of themselves at work. Daniel watched me carefully. "I think she was right." He nodded once after that. No persuasion, no disappointment. Just acceptance. "You'll do well there," he said. "Maybe." "You will." I stood to leave but paused near the door. "For what it's worth, I said you could have ignored all this." Daniel looked down briefly at the folder on his desk. "Yes," he said softly, "that's what bothers me." I left his office without another word. My final week at the company felt strangely gentle. Not warm, just quieter than before. People had adjusted to the new hierarchy already. Humans always do. Fear settles eventually into routine. Some executives suddenly treated me with polished respect now that I was leaving. Others barely acknowledged me at all anymore without the possibility of promotion attached to my name. Interesting how quickly value shifts once people realize they can't use proximity to you. On Thursday afternoon, Priya from operations stopped by my office carrying a small paper bag. "I didn't know if you liked blueberry or chocolate chip." I blinked at her. "What?" "The muffins." She held up the bag awkwardly. "For your last week." I laughed softly before I could stop myself. "That's very nice." She shrugged immediately, like she regretted the gesture. "You were nice to me when everyone got weird." "Everyone got weird." That was exactly the phrase for it. "Thank you," I said. Her shoulders relaxed a little after that. Before leaving, she hesitated near the doorway. "I'm glad you stayed," she said quietly. Then she disappeared down the hallway before I could answer. Friday morning, I wore the same cream blouse and gray blazer from my first day. The sleeve was still slightly frayed near the cuff. My mother had offered to fix it 3 separate times. I told her no each time. When I entered the lobby, the receptionist looked up immediately. Different receptionist now. But still. "Good morning, Ms. Morales." I smiled politely. No squeaking shoes this time. I'd finally replaced them last month. Funny what changes slowly. Around noon, Vanessa messaged asking if I had time for coffee before I left. We met at a small cafe across the street from the office. Not trendy enough for executives, mostly students and remote workers nursing laptops. Vanessa arrived 5 minutes late wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. She removed them once she sat down. "You're really leaving," she said. "I am." She stirred her coffee without drinking it. I used to think people who walked away from places like this were idiots. And now, a short pause. Now I think maybe they noticed something earlier than I did. Neither of us smiled. The cafe speakers played quiet jazz too loudly. Vanessa looked older than when I met her, not physically, more like someone standing without armor for the first time. My father asked about you, she said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. He said you were the only person in the building who answered questions directly. That doesn't sound true. No, she gave a tired laugh. It really does. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. Warm ceramic, small comfort? Vanessa looked at me carefully. I was horrible to you. I didn't interrupt. I keep replaying that morning in my head. She swallowed once. You walked in scared and she shook her head slightly. I saw weakness before I saw a person. The honesty in it made looking at her harder somehow. I don't need an apology anymore, I said quietly. I know. That was the first completely honest thing between us. We sat there a while after that. Not friends, probably never friends. But no longer performing old roles either. Before leaving, Vanessa glanced at my blazer sleeve. The jacket survived, she said softly. I looked down at it. Yeah. Then she smiled a little. So did you. Back at the office, I packed the last box from my desk slowly. Notebook, framed photo of my mother pretending not to pose. 2 pens I accidentally stole from conference rooms. Nothing dramatic. No farewell speech. Near the elevators, Daniel shook my hand once and wished me luck. People kept working behind us. That felt right. As the elevator doors opened in the lobby, I noticed a young woman standing near reception clutching a temporary badge with both hands. Cheap flats, nervous posture, trying very hard not to take up space. I recognized it immediately. A man in a tailored suit brushed past her without looking. She stepped aside too quickly and nearly dropped her badge. Nobody noticed except me. For a second, she stared at the floor exactly the way I had on my first day. I almost kept walking. Then I stopped. You new here, I asked. She looked up fast. Yeah. Her voice came out small. I smiled gently. You'll be okay, I said. Not because the building would become kinder, but because sometimes surviving long enough to recognize yourself again is its own kind of power. And sometimes one person choosing not to look away matters more than all the people who did. The end.